My friends, every age has its peculiar enemy. In one age it is war, in another it is poverty, in another it is a plague that sweeps across the land. Yet there is a more subtle enemy, one which slips into every century, every household, every heart. It does not come with a trumpet's call, nor with the shout of armies, nor even with the rattling of chains. It comes silently, softly, and often with a smile. That enemy is distraction. We are, all of us, creatures of astonishing attention. Our minds are capable of grasping eternal truths, soaring into the contemplation of God Himself, or attending with care to the small needs of a neighbor. Yet we are also creatures with fragile focus, easily turned aside by the most trivial beckoning. One moment we are resolved to think upon what is noble, good, and lasting. The next we are consumed by a passing curiosity, a flicker of entertainment, or a noise at the window. The danger of distraction is not merely that it wastes our time, though it surely does. It is that it gradually draws us away from the real business of life. Distraction is not a thief who robs us in one bold stroke. It is 1,000 tiny gnats that drain us drop by drop. A man rarely sets out saying, "I will abandon what matters most and chase what is shallow." No, he only delays. He says, "I will pray, but after this. I will serve, but not today. I will think deeply, but let me glance first at this small thing." And so, little by little, the hours pass, the days pass, and life itself passes, while his true calling is left undone. What then is the remedy? Surely it is not to rid the world of every distraction, for that is impossible. The clamor of life will not cease for our convenience. Rather, the remedy is to learn the art of choosing. We must learn to ask in every moment, what is worth my attention? What is worth my heart? For the worth of a man is measured by the things that hold his gaze. If he fixes his eyes always on what is fleeting, then fleeting he will become. But if he lifts his eyes toward what is eternal, then eternal strength will enter into him. Consider for a moment the great paradox. Distractions often appear harmless, even pleasant, yet they gain their power precisely because they are not obvious evils. If they were vile, we would flee them, but because they are small, we indulge them. It is not the lion at the door that ruins us, but the constant tapping of pebbles against the window that keeps us from reading the words of life. And yet, to overcome distraction is not only to resist, it is to replace. The heart cannot be emptied and left bare. It must be filled with something stronger, nobler, more compelling. If one would turn away from the endless noise, let him turn toward the music of truth. If one would resist the pull of shallow things, let him taste the richness of what is deep. For when a man has glimpsed beauty, when he has known the joy of real communion, the cheap diversions lose their flavor. But let no one imagine this is easy. The battle against distraction is daily, sometimes hourly. We shall often stumble, often find ourselves halfway through the day and realize we have wandered far from what we intended. Yet even then, all is not lost. Each moment offers us the chance to return, to begin again, to turn the eyes back to what matters. To overcome distraction is not the achievement of a single hour, but the patient training of a lifetime. So let us be watchful. Let us guard the treasure of our attention as one guards a flame against the wind. For the way we spend our attention is the way we spend our lives, and the way we spend our lives is the way we step into eternity. The subtle danger of distractions lies not in their obvious harm, but in their quiet power to divert us from what truly matters. The subtle danger of distractions lies not in their obvious harm, but in their quiet power to divert us from what truly matters. If one were to imagine the great enemies of life, one might think of calamity, betrayal, sickness, or loss. These are sharp and sudden blows that seize our attention at once. They may leave scars, but they cannot be ignored. Distractions, however, never announce themselves so plainly. They come quietly, often dressed in the garments of harmless amusements or daily necessities. And it is precisely their modest appearance that makes them so dangerous. A soldier can prepare for battle when he sees the enemy coming across the field, but how does he prepare for the small whisper that lures him away from his post, one footstep at a time, until he realizes too late that he has abandoned his station? When we look back upon wasted hours, we rarely say, "I chose wrongly in a single great moment." More often, we confess, "I was carried away by little things." A man sits down to read a noble book or reflect upon a deep truth, but first he glances at some trivial message, then he listens to a passing noise, and before he knows it, the day is gone and the book lies untouched. A woman resolves to pray or to serve another, yet she allows herself just one more small distraction until her strength is scattered and the purpose fades. These diversions do not crash upon us like storms. They erode us like water slowly cutting into stone. The very smallness of distractions deceives us, for we tell ourselves it is only a moment, only a glance, only a thought, not realizing that each moment is a thread, and many threads woven together form the fabric of our days. The real danger is that distractions do not only consume our time, they shape our souls. A person who allows his heart to be constantly turned toward what is shallow becomes shallow himself. It is not that the distractions are always evil in themselves. A game, a conversation, a passing thought may hold no harm on their own, but when they gather in excess, when they begin to rule us, they draw us away from the higher callings for which we were made. We cannot give our finest attention to eternal truths if our minds are always being pulled in a dozen directions by trivialities. We cannot become men and women of depth if our gaze is continually fixed on the surface of things. It is worth noting that distractions often disguise themselves as urgent matters. The little bell that rings, the fleeting image that flashes, the sudden request for our eyes or ears, these carry the weight of immediacy. They insist, "Notice me now or you will lose me." And so we respond as if urgency were the same as importance. But the greatest things in life rarely shout for our attention. Truth waits quietly. Wisdom is patient. The voice of God is often still and small. If we train ourselves only to heed what is loud or pressing, we will miss what is truly worthy. There is also the illusion that one can indulge distractions without consequence, that attention can be given away in small portions and still reclaimed at will. But attention is like a river. Once it flows in one direction, it carves channels that grow deeper with time. The more we yield to distraction, the more natural it becomes to live distracted. Habits of mind are formed not by single choices, but by countless repetitions. A person who feeds on shallow interruptions day after day may one day discover he no longer has the power to sit in stillness, to concentrate, or to dwell upon truth. His mind, once strong, has become restless, addicted to novelty, unable to remain where it ought to be. This is why the subtlety of distractions is their greatest danger. They do not confront us with an obvious battle, but slowly reshape our desires until we hardly recognize the change. The man who dreamed of great service to others becomes a man who has no time, for his days are eaten away by small diversions. The woman who longed to grow in wisdom finds her heart empty, for her attention has been consumed by trifles. They did not fall because of a single decisive choice. They drifted because of 1,000 small ones, and yet the true measure of distraction's danger is not only what it takes from us, but what it prevents us from receiving. Each moment we give away to what is shallow is a moment we cannot give to what is deep. The minutes wasted in trivial pursuits are minutes stolen from love, from growth, from communion with what is eternal. Time is the one gift we can never reclaim once it is spent. To squander it on endless distractions is not merely to waste it, but to reject the opportunity it held. If one were to ask why the matter is so grave, the answer lies in this: life is not long. We flatter ourselves with the thought that there will always be time to return to what matters, that the important things can be postponed until after the small ones are finished. But days slip away quietly, just as distractions creep in quietly, and when we finally lift our heads, we may find that what we postponed has been postponed forever. The danger of distractions is not that they destroy in one sudden act, but that they delay until there is nothing left to delay. Overcoming distraction requires learning the art of deliberate attention, choosing what is worthy of our gaze and guarding it with discipline. Overcoming distraction requires learning the art of deliberate attention, choosing what is worthy of our gaze and guarding it with discipline. Attention is not simply the passive act of looking. It is the act of the will, the placing of one's mind and heart upon something as if to say, "This is where I will remain." To attend is to declare importance. Whatever we consistently attend to, we elevate, and whatever we ignore, we diminish. If our attention is scattered, then so too is our life, for the direction of our days follows the direction of our gaze. Distraction is not only the theft of time, it is the scattering of the self, and so the recovery of deliberate attention is not a luxury, but a necessity for anyone who wishes to live with purpose. The modern world offers us no shortage of rivals for our attention. Every object, every voice, every screen clamors with the same demand: look at me now. The temptation is to allow ourselves to be carried away by whatever is loudest or most colorful, as though attention were something that can be tossed about without cost. But deliberate attention requires choice, and choice requires the courage to refuse. To attend to what is worthy means deciding that not everything deserves our gaze. It means silencing some voices so that the true voice may be heard, shutting out some lights so that the greater light may shine. The discipline of attention is born not from having more time, but from having clearer priorities. We often deceive ourselves with the thought that we can give attention equally to all things. We imagine that by fragmenting our gaze, we can still hold the whole together. But the human mind is not infinite. It cannot dwell in many places at once without growing thin. To give half of our focus to many things is to give nothing in full measure to any one thing. If love is to be real, it must be focused. If thought is to be deep, it must be concentrated. If worship is to be genuine, it must be undivided. A distracted love, a distracted thought, a distracted prayer is but a shadow of what it could have been. Deliberate attention, then, is not about quantity but quality. It is better to give an hour of true presence than a lifetime of distracted fragments. The art of attention also demands discipline over desire. For our desires are often unruly. They leap toward whatever is pleasant or new, and they resist the effort of staying still. To learn deliberate attention is to train desire, to teach the heart to remain when it wants to wander. This is why discipline is indispensable. Discipline is the steady hand that keeps the compass pointed toward the chosen direction, even when the winds blow fiercely. Without it, our gaze will be forever shifting, forever restless, forever chasing the next thing that sparkles for a moment and fades the next. With it, we are able to hold fast to what is truly important. Regardless of the noise around us, it is worth recognizing that deliberate attention is not merely about avoiding the trivial, but about embracing the essential. To choose what is worthy requires discernment. Not all that is urgent is important, and not all that is important is urgent. The ringing bell, the flashing message, the sudden call for our focus. These may not carry the weight of true significance. Meanwhile, the quiet opportunities to reflect, to love, to listen, to grow often come without clamor. The task, then, is to learn to distinguish between the loud and the lasting, between the immediate and the eternal. To fix our eyes on what is truly worthy is to live by depth rather than by noise. Another aspect of this art is the cultivation of presence. Presence is the posture of the soul that says, I am here, wholly here, undivided. When one is present to another person, distractions fade and the other feels truly seen. When one is present in thought, understanding deepens beyond the surface. When one is present in prayer, the soul communes with eternity. To practice deliberate attention, therefore, is to practice presence, to push aside the restlessness of divided focus and allow the moment before us to unfold in its fullness. Presence requires courage because it means resisting the temptation to escape into diversions. But presence is also the only soil in which growth, love, and meaning can take root. The battle for attention is not fought once and for all, but moment by moment. Each day brings countless opportunities to choose where our gaze will rest. Will it rest on what is shallow, or on what is profound, on what is fleeting, or on what is enduring, on the noise of the world, or on the voice of truth? Every choice, however small, trains the soul. Just as a muscle grows by repeated exercise, so attention grows by repeated discipline. Over time, the deliberate choice to focus on what matters strengthens the will, until attention becomes less a battle and more a natural posture. Yet we must also acknowledge that deliberate attention is not achieved by sheer effort alone. The human heart is too easily swayed to remain faithful by willpower only. What sustains attention is love. We give our attention most fully to what we love most deeply. The child absorbed in play, the artist lost in creation, the lover gazing upon the beloved. They do not strain to focus, for their love directs their gaze without effort. In the same way, if we are to overcome distraction, we must cultivate love for what is highest and truest. The stronger that love becomes, the easier it will be to turn aside from the petty interruptions that once ensnared us. Thus, deliberate attention is a union of choice, discipline, and love. Choice sets the direction, discipline keeps it steady, and love makes it natural. Without choice, we drift. Without discipline, we waver. Without love, we grow weary. But when all three come together, attention becomes not a burden but a joy, not a struggle but a delight. To live with deliberate attention is to live with purpose, to allow one's gaze to be anchored in what gives life meaning, and to guard that gaze as one guards a precious flame against the winds of distraction. The most effective way to defeat distractions is not by mere resistance, but by replacing them with a higher vision that captivates the soul. The most effective way to defeat distractions is not by mere resistance, but by replacing them with a higher vision that captivates the soul. Resistance alone is often too fragile, for the human heart is not content with emptiness. To simply say no to a distraction leaves a vacuum, and vacuums beg to be filled. If we attempt to fight distractions by force of will without providing the mind and heart with something richer, the distractions will return, often with greater strength. The imagination abhors a void. Therefore, the surest way to overcome what is shallow is to give ourselves to what is deep, to replace what is trivial with what is transcendent, and to let the stronger affection drive out the weaker. One consider the child who is absorbed in a storybook. The chatter of others, the noises outside, even the passing of time itself lose their power, not because he has hardened himself against them, but because his mind is taken up with something better. He does not resist distraction, he forgets it. His imagination is held captive by a tale more compelling than anything around him. In the same way, when the soul encounters a vision of beauty, truth, or goodness that is greater than the glittering trifles the world offers, those trifles fade into the background. They are not so much fought as they are outshone. This principle explains why so many efforts to master distraction fail. People resolve to cut out diversions, to limit their indulgences, to scold themselves for wasted hours, yet they find themselves returning again and again to the very things they sought to avoid. They attempt subtraction without addition. They remove the distraction but fail to provide a greater object for their attention. But the heart cannot be trained by emptiness. It must be drawn by attraction. The secret is not simply to forbid what is lesser, but to discover what is greater. When the vision of what is higher fills the mind, the appeal of what is lower diminishes on its own. It is a matter of loves. We are creatures of desire before we are creatures of discipline. Our gaze follows our affection, and our affection follows what we believe to be good. If we would truly overcome distraction, we must learn to love something so deeply that it captures our attention naturally. The artist who loves beauty does not need to be coerced into focusing on his work. The scholar who loves wisdom does not need to be dragged to his books. The one who loves another person does not need to be persuaded to attend to them with care. Love directs attention with far greater strength than fear or duty. Therefore, the victory over distraction is less about gritting one's teeth and more about enlarging one's heart to cultivate this higher vision. One must feed the soul with what is lasting. If we continually nourish ourselves on the shallow and the fleeting, our appetite will remain shallow and fleeting. But if we expose ourselves to what is noble, if we meditate upon truths that endure, if we dwell upon beauty that lifts us beyond ourselves, then our taste begins to change. The cheap distractions of the world lose their savor when compared to the richness of what is eternal. Just as a man who has tasted fine bread will no longer crave stale crumbs, so a soul that has tasted higher joys will no longer be enslaved by trivial diversions. There is a paradox in this. The more we attempt to fight distractions directly, the more power they seem to hold, but the more we turn our attention toward what is greater, the more they lose their grip without a struggle. It is as though the distractions thrive on the energy of our resistance, but wither in the presence of a greater light. A candle seems bright until the sun rises. No effort is needed to extinguish it. It fades by comparison. In the same way, the diversions that once consumed us lose their force when we stand before the radiance of something infinitely more worthy. Yet this does not mean the change happens at once. The soul does not leap from captivity to freedom in a single bound. Often, it must learn gradually, feeding itself on what is higher little by little until the appetite is retrained. At first, the lesser distractions will still pull strongly, but with time, the taste for what is eternal deepens, and the lesser things seem less enticing. It is a slow transformation, but a real one. The victory lies not in one great act of resistance, but in the steady, daily turning toward the vision that holds our affection most firmly. To live this way is to live by substitution rather than suppression. Suppression says, I will not be distracted. Substitution says, I have found something better. Suppression often fails, for the mind grows weary of constant battle. But substitution succeeds, because the heart naturally clings to what it loves. The true conqueror of distraction is not the man who shuts out every noise, but the man whose heart is so full of what matters that the noises do not interest him. He does not merely say no to the world's diversions. He says yes to something infinitely greater. This higher vision need not always be dramatic or rare. It can be as simple as the quiet joy of meaningful work, the profound beauty of a thoughtful book, the warmth of a genuine conversation, or the peace of silent reflection. Each of these has a depth that trivial diversions cannot rival. By cultivating them, by returning to them again and again, we train our attention to love what is worthy. Gradually, the shallow distractions that once seemed irresistible begin to feel empty, not because we forced them away, but because we found something better to hold instead, and so the path to overcoming distractions is not paved merely with denials, but with affirmations. It is not primarily a matter of what we turn from, but what we turn toward. When we find the vision that lifts us above ourselves, when we allow our attention to be captivated by what is eternal, then the distractions fall away naturally, like shadows retreating before the dawn.